Or I came to Minneapolis to come here to do the whatever I was doing at the time. I had a dream one night, and in the dream there was a pulpit over here, and of course there were pews then. That's before they had the lightning thing that ruined whatever, you know. So I was in the pulpit, and in the front row was a woman named Karen, who I'd met at some conference, spiritual conference. And she was sitting right there, and Linda Osborne was the minister then. This was quite some time ago. And behind me, there was like a secret passageway, you know. So I walked over, and if you push this door, this opens up and it goes to the office, or the old pastor's office back there, you know. So when I got here, I told Linda about the dream. She said, well, walk over there and push. And sure enough, that was a passage. I thought, wow, you know. And that Sunday, I gave a talk or a sermon or whatever that was at the time, and Karen sat right here, just like the dream, you know. Many years later, of course, this church has been through a lot of metamorphosis type things, you know. And I was home in my bed in Rochester, New York, up on the 3rd floor, and the phone rang, and it was a committee from the old Lake Harriet Community Church. And they said, we've had a meeting, and we've decided that we would like to call you to be the pastor here. I said, no. I don't fit. I don't grown the traditional church. They asked me to take over the ARE in Virginia Beach, and I said, no. If you had asked me 20 years ago, I would have given you my eye teeth for this job. But no, it's too confined. You know, Buddha said that religion is poison. That wasn't Mao or whoever that was. That was a different, no, Marx, I guess. The idea was that religion gives you beliefs and things to adhere to which limit your ability to be free. And freedom is religion. Okay, so if you have no constraints, no beliefs, then you can come and go and do what you darn well please in a given moment. You have free will from God, whatever, and so that gives you the opportunity to create yourself, right? We talked about that earlier. So I like that idea, and the thing about Buddha was the concept that he achieved at enlightenment, which was nothing, which was not very popular. People wanted something, and he had nothing. All right, so he said, well, you have to achieve nothing, be a zero, to achieve nirvana, which would be total happiness. You have no desire, you have no ego, you're just, you know, now you're free. I thought, well, that's very lovely, but I think he should have waited a little bit longer under the tree. One of the things he forgot to become enlightened with was the role of women in Buddhism in those days. Because the Sangha, as you know, was their school. And a lot of people would come, but there were no women. Now, Buddha's mother died when he was born. If you know this story, forgive me, but his mother died when he was born. And so his aunt raised him. I'm from New England. We do aunts, not ants. Okay? So his aunt raised him, and at one point she said, Buddha, or whatever she called him. I mean, his nickname was Joe, if you didn't know that. But she said, hey, Joe, you know, and where are the women? And so he said, oh, right, you know. So then women came into the Sangha. And of course, males and females from all different castes and different, you know, groups were part of that school for a very long time. It was really quite avant for that period, you know. The same kind of thing happened with Muhammad. You know, when Muhammad was born, his mother died. I guess it's what happens when you become one of those people. And so his aunt raised him. And of course, after he achieved, you know, his enlightenment or whatever that situation was, she came to him and said, excuse me, there are no women in the Muslim movement. What? So then that was changed, you know. So a few years ago, I had the delight of being up in Tibet and Lhasa, and also in Dharamshala in northern India. And we were having a meeting with some of the high lamas there, and one of our people said, excuse me, I've noticed there are no women in the higher levels of Tibetan Buddhism. Can you explain that? And the head lama said, well, yes, well, in the last 400 years, none have qualified. Woo! Well, about 2 years later, I was in Montreal, and I was with a friend of mine, Tom Sawyer, and we were taking the vow of the Bodhisattva, which took about 3 days. The Dalai Lama came in on the first day. He sat on his little throne, and he said, it has been drawn to my attention that there are not enough women in the higher levels of Tibetan Buddhism. As to today, that has all been changed. And all the Tibetans were sitting in the front row. The roof practically came off, you know. And I don't know who the Pope was at the time, but he said, okay, get on your tiara, get your dress on, and get out on that balcony and free the women and the men. Well, it still hasn't happened. We do have a Jesuit now, which means, you know, I was really hoping he would really go so far as to wear blue jeans on a tank top when he took his vows. I mean, he's the Pope, he can do whatever he wants, supposedly, you know. Well, as a Jesuit, as you know, it's a whole different way that they're going to approach being Roman Catholic at this point. And I'm really excited about what's possible. You know, one of the talks that was going on was, will he allow the priest to get married? Why not? How else can you have a good marriage counselor? Will he allow women to become priests in the order of Melchizedek? Because that's their order, you know. Of course, that hasn't happened yet, but that's inevitable. It's part of the New Age. A lot of changes that could have happened that still may, because, you know, he took the name Francis. And the original Saint Francis was quite a renovator in his time, and he took on the Roman Catholic Church and he changed it. He cleaned it up, and then he put it back out on the street. So here we have another Francis who's a Jesuit. How did that happen? Well, they're pretty politically savvy because, you know, 42% of the Roman Catholic Church is in Central and South America. And he also is an Italian, so they had themselves covered pretty well politically, you know. So I was telling my sister about it, and she said, well, you know, he's 76 and he has one lung, so he probably won't live too long. I said, well, but in the meantime, he could make some real significant changes. You know, after all, he is supposedly the head of the organization, the corporation, and he can dictate what needs to happen. And so I have great hope for that. The other part is this. I want to quote you something from one of the teachings of Jesus from way, way back. This book is my second one, as some of you know, and it is a collection of teachings supposedly originally from Jesus from way, way, way back, and then around 200 CE or whatever, it was, you know, codified or written down. But it was taken from one of his original disciples or followers, whose name was also Judas, but he was a twin of somebody. So in that sense, the Greek word Didymus, which means twin, is also the word Thomas. Did you get that? So it wasn't Judas Iscariot, in other words. This is another person who was a twin of somebody. And so he supposedly was in the higher realms of the teachings of Jesus. So he wrote down a lot of the things that Jesus had taught way back. And some of them were pretty interesting, like what's the sound of one hand clapping underwater kind of thing, you know? So I want to use this one here to just give you an idea of what's going on presently in the world, because it's very, very exciting. This is number 10. There were 114 teachings. And, well, I'll just tell you a little bit of a story here. I was in Virginia, Vienna, Virginia, and I was ready to go teach and do ordinations for the next 2 or 3 days. And when I don't go to sleep at night. I sleep eventually, but in order to get to sleep, to shut my monkey brain off, I have to turn on the TV. I put on Turner Classic Movies really low, so I'm listening to the movie and then I go right to sleep. It's like a sleeping pill, right? So, but I wake up every night at 3 o'clock in the morning, boop, wide awake, you know, ready to go to work or whatever. So I woke up and I'm looking out of one eye, and here's the TV scrolling this old movie called Stigmata, which I probably wouldn't have gone to see, you know, wasn't my cup of tea. And yet it quoted, you know, credits, and it said, and the Gospel of Thomas. I thought, now I've been to 3 seminaries, Andover Newton in Boston, Crozer in Chester, where Dr. King had gone to school, finished the Colgate Divinity School, studied Old Testament. They never mentioned Melchizedek for one thing, and certainly nothing about the Gospel of Thomas. So I thought, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Thomas? I don't know Thomas. I went back to sleep, got up in the morning, shaved, showered, went off to go to work. Opened the door to this New Age bookstore, and here is a full display of Gospel of Thomas. I thought, got it. Buy the book, get out the credit card, whatever you've got, you know. So I think it was Dr. Bloom's book. I think he's a PhD. I thought, God, this is going to be exciting. I mean, this is real, you know, because you know how they found the scrolls? There were some Arab guys looking for some fertilizer that grew along the river banks or whatever. And so they were digging around a boulder or something, and they found a jar, and they popped it open, and all these little golden filaments flew in the sunlight. They thought there was a genie in there. It's like, ooh, we're either going to be very happy or very sad about this. So, of course, there was no genie, but what they found were these scrolls of ancient writings. And the area is called Nag Hammadi, so that now has become, as you know, the Nag Hammadi Library. So it's a lot of Gnostic things and whatever, you know. So anyway, that material is what this book is based on. So anyway, I bought the book, couldn't understand it. I thought, how hard could this be? Because some of them are very familiar parables, like the sowing of the seed and that kind of thing. But others are just beyond, for me, comprehension. So I had the book and I tried to read it. I got frustrated. I put it away. I fly a lot. And for some reason, when I'm 30,000 feet up in the air, I get smart. So I'm up in the air, and all of a sudden, I had the book and I couldn't get it. I said, I desire to know. I want to understand. And then a little voice occurs and it says, well, get a paper and a pencil and, here we go. So, number one. And so, number one is really kind of easy if you want to think of it that way, but yet it isn't. How do we go here? Without my glasses, you're lucky. He or she, which had not been written at that point, but we added that. He or she who comprehends the interpretation of these sayings will never taste death. Well, you've read that in the New Testament. If you do this or whatever, you're going to die. If you add a jot or tittle to this, you're going to rot and go to hell or something. Well, I knew that wasn't what it was all about. So, but the inspiration was all about the veils of illusion, the veils of consciousness, and once you are beyond one veil, there is others, but you will never die into that old consciousness kind of thing. So Moses supposedly wore a veil when he achieved enlightenment. The light from his countenance was so brilliant that they said, would you please cover that? And the same thing happened to Muhammad. Apparently, he wore a veil also. I guess it's what you do, you get a veil and then that person's enlightened. So anyway, that was that. Well, number 10 is this. Well, let me get my glasses here because once I put them on, I have to use them again. If I don't, I can read without them. Okay, here we go. So this is the 10th teaching. Okay, I have cast a fire upon the world, and look, I am guarding it until it blazes. Well, what they said was, I have brought consciousness and enlightenment into the world. Messengers of truth have come into the human condition, and some with spontaneous awakening or near-death awakening are now working in the field. In time, their labors will produce a giant light, as if the world were on fire. Fire transforms and changes the old ways of being and thinking and makes the new possible. The old ways were destroyed by water and a flood. The new world will be cleansed by fires of consciousness and truth. At first just a flame, and then an intense conflagration. The old things pass away, and behold, I make all things new. The world is to be filled with enlightenment and equality. That's not too bad, So this book is a spiritual interpretation of 114 teachings that belong to Jesus in the age of Pisces. Well, that was now to be rendered in the age of Aquarius, which we're in. It began with a series of earthquakes and volcanoes, and we're still in the beginning throes of that. So what's happening here? Cast a fire into the world, and I'm watching it glow. Fire is consciousness. So what we have is an entire planet, everyone in this room, who's being bombarded with unconditional love. Basically, that's what it is. And it's encouraging us to change or to grow, to become full of light, to become enlightened. Or as Buddha would say, to be nothing and everything. So, what did we have, about 2 years ago? The Arab Spring? Yeah? So here we have a country go into revolution and begin to change. They were not content with the way it was. Okay? Do you know who the vice president of their country is now? Anybody? A woman. Muslim country with a woman vice president. Right? This kind of consciousness is going all around the world. We had the Occupy movement here. We had it in Rochester. It was all over the globe. And all that was young people and not so young people asking for equality. The New Age is about egalitarianism. And so what's happening globally are countries, people, individuals who are working because they become aware or enlightened that we need to be equal to be free. And so we have countries like Great Britain voting for same-sex marriage. We have countries like Brazil and Spain and Canada, and perhaps in June our own, possibly, because we're doomed to perfection, which means the New Age is about equality. So this wave of this fire of consciousness will go everywhere. Everything will be transformed by this eventually. Perhaps in our generation, definitely our children's generation, they say, what's the problem? What's the problem about, why are we even discussing this, you see? When Moses was 70, he went back to Egypt to take his people into their promised land. And he had a speech impediment, and, God and Moses are talking or whatever, supposedly. And there's the burning bush, and Moses is sent back to Egypt. And he said, well, I can't talk. He said, well, take your brother. And he has a magic stick. It'll work. So they go back to Egypt. They take the slaves out of Egypt. And then why did they take this long walk, if they ever did? It could all be a myth, because they had to walk off their slave mentality. None of that generation crossed the Jordan to take Jericho. The new ones who were not born in slavery were the ones who were devoid of that inhibition. They wouldn't allow themselves to receive. Of course, nobody in this room has that problem. So to be free is to choose to be free. It's just an idea. Whatever your beliefs are also possibly your constraints. They may get you through the day, but ultimately you have to be free and choose freedom in order to be free. Change of attitude shifts a galaxy. A galaxy is all the thought forms in your consciousness that are going around and around and around. When you change your attitude, forgive, release, and let go, that is all changed. And now you're ready for the conflagration. You're ready for this new age of equality. And it's not just about the two-legged, it's about us. It's about all sentient beings. Just the other day on the internet, did you catch the thing they talked about? They found out that trees make noise. Did you see that one? Y'all do the internet, right? Yeah. Well, you saw in the Lord of the Rings, they got up and they walked. I mean, come on. But trees have a consciousness. Well, how do we know this is true? Well, let's go back. Some of you are older than me in a way. And there was a book out called, The Secret Life of Plants. Remember that one? Yeah? Okay. Well, they proved it there. This guy had an apartment. He had all these houseplants in it. He had a buddy come in and trash the place. He cursed. He threw things around, and then he walked out of the room. Well, then he took lie detectors and planted them in all his houseplants. And they had two other buddies walk in. Nothing. Nothing. The third guy walked in was the guy who trashed the place. All the plants went, oh my God, it's him. Right. Dr. Emoto. Right? Water responds to consciousness. Water is consciousness. Why? Because if you go to Buddha or you go to any of the enlightened teachers, they talk about the beginning where there was nothing but everything. That's why I said Buddha should have stayed under the tree a little bit longer. I think he would have found that the no thing that he was experiencing was really the potential for everything. Okay? Here's my teaching tool today. Simple little black box. Find them in all the airplanes. Not really. That's one of Jim's jokes. Okay, anybody have any ideas? What does it represent? You can talk here. This is not church, okay? Sort of. Anybody? A cube, yes. Equal balance, yeah. Where do you see this in Islam? The Kaaba. In Medina, yeah. 7 times around in the Hajj, which used to be done by anyone, now only Muslims can do. I would like to do that. I think that would be so cool, And maybe before I go, they'll invite me to come over and walk around, take a trip around the block. They used to bow to Jerusalem. And then Muhammad had them coming here, Well, what is this about? We're going to look at this for a little bit. In Medina, not out here, over there. I know. I've got a Rochester, New York, and so do you, okay? Well, you've got a Minnesota. But anyway, according to the Muslim faith or whatever, or ideas, Adam built the first altar to God here. And then Abraham, who was taught by Melchizedek, by the way, augmented it, added to it. And then it got to be all kind of squirrely with people with all their gods and goddesses. So Muhammad came and cleaned it out. And so now this is the symbol of the Kaaba, or the original altar to God in the Muslim faith. Okay. One of my friends, whom some of you know about, his name is Tom Sawyer, and no, he's not Mark Twain's character. He had perhaps, yeah, he did. He had the most profound death experience, not near death, that's ever been recorded. He said he didn't believe in God, thought Jesus was a fairy tale. I think he was just making us comfortable. He was basically a messenger from God who was sent here to help us to not destroy this planet in the summer of 1988 with thermonuclear war. Got that? So anyway, in his death experience, he was an Olympic caliber athlete. He could hold his breath forever underwater. I mean, the guy was a superb athlete and in great condition, 33 years old. Had a truck fall on him with firewood. He was under it, showing his boys the proper way to change the transmission. The truck went boom, boom. Well, after he could no longer hold his breath, he went unconscious, but he said, I woke up. What did he see? Not a box. Blackness. Nothing, no thing, but everything. It was God before it created light. He said it was as black as you can possibly imagine, and then it got more intense. It got deeper. And then there was a point of light. He said the most beautiful light I'd ever seen, ever, that became like a tunnel or a cyclone coming at me. So now, first of all, he knows, oh, there is God. Got me there. Then the point of light, which was also God. The cyclone was God. Then he realized, before he started going down that tunnel toward the point of origin, that the point was God, the void, as we call it, was God. Everything inside the tunnel and outside the tunnel was God. There's only God. You can't have God and anti-God. It doesn't work. There's only God. So there was no devil, no hell, no sin, no evil. We create those things to try to control ourselves and one another, or whatever. You know, the devil made me do it. So anyway, he experienced the light and communicated with it. And basically the light said, well, Tom, we have a contract, remember? You agreed to die at 33, not have a near death, have a death experience, because the planet is on the verge of thermonuclear war in the summer of 1988. This was May 23rd, 1978. And he said, God says, I can't interfere in human history because of free will. But if you can do something to prevent this, then they won't destroy the planet and they can keep the school open. This is a school, if you haven't noticed, okay? So obviously he did what he came to do. There were three things. Teach people that death doesn't exist. You cannot destroy energy. You live forever. We existed before the universe was created in the mind of God. All right? And we're all soulmates. Get over it. And then, you know, God created light. It separated itself from itself and then created light and everything visible and invisible. The lords of the seven rays are the seven chakras. We've got them right here. All right? And through the prism of the white light came the seven, and they're right in your body, you know, and it goes on and on forever. So everything came into creation and then evolved from the point of creation. Now, the energy that they finally discovered, when they discovered that there was a unified field, and they proved it, they call neutrinos. Sounds like a breakfast cereal. Okay, you internet buffs, what did they say about neutrinos about 2 months ago? Anybody? People, you've got to look at that thing once in a while. I know it's an invasion of your privacy. Neutrinos is unconditional love, which they can't prove in a test tube. However, what they proved with neutrinos is they travel faster than... Right. And how is that possible? It's God. God's everywhere. God doesn't need time, and there is no time or space, to go within itself, you see? And so that's what that was all about. It was exciting. I mean, you got to look at the internet once in a while. I mean, there's some neat stuff in there. Do you remember what the Italian physicist said about the Shroud of Turin 2-3 months ago? Really? Am I the only one reading this crazy thing every morning? Yeah. Well, you remember the Shroud of Turin supposedly was the linen that was wrapped around the body of Jesus on the day he was executed and then resurrected. And the fuzz on the linen contained on it gamma ash residue. And when we invented the camera and photographed the negative image, we found the positive image of Jeshua Bar Joseph on the day he was executed. Coins of Tiberius over his eyes. He didn't have a crown of thorns. He had a yarmulke of thorns. He was beaten by a tall man and a short man with leather straps with metal embedded in it. They broke his nose, you know, and then they put him in this sling and carried him to his uncle's tomb and rolled the stone in front of it, which was used to press olives. until he went through spontaneous combustion and presto changeo, went back from a physical to a light body. The same body he had when he was in the form of Melchizedek or Melchizedek. It was not physical. Okay? So anyway, there was an energy released from this whole transformation in the tomb. All right? If you were there, some of you might have been. If you were there, you would have seen a brilliant white light, but it would be blue to your eyes. It wouldn't blind you. Tremendous white light. In the air is a trace amount of ammonia. On the linen was a gamma ash residue, powder, grayish yellow powder, okay? Now there was an energy released from this whole thing, like a supernova, all right? And some people called it the Comforter. Others would call it the Holy Spirit. Scientists call it neutrinos. Travels faster than the speed of light. What my friend Tom said is they will never discover neutrinos are made of unconditional love. They do not evolve to become quarks or wavelength functions of subatomic particles. But because they exist, I am that I am, everything comes into being from the void to the point of light, and then evolution forever after. Right? It's really exciting. Tom used to call our bodies puny animal bodies with a spirit. Kind of fashioned after the chimpanzee or whatever, and some of us are still close to that one. Whatever. See, that's what separates us from the Southern Baptists. We have a sense of humor. Forgive me. Anyway, okay, let's look at this again. What this represents is the fourth level of meditation. There are 10 levels of meditation, if you didn't know. I didn't know either. I get taught when I go to sleep at night. There were 10 levels of meditation. This is number 4. Okay, what's that all about? Okay, if you wanted to experience truth, not relative truth, universal truth, we live in an omniverse. Now, that was on the internet recently. Did you catch that one? Yeah, they said we're a universe within universes within, there are like billions or something, you know. So we could say omniverse now, and that would include the whole Megillah, okay? And now, why am I telling you this? There was a reason. Oh, yeah, okay. So, in a fourth dimensional reality, or in a fourth dimensional meditative state, you can imagine yourself inside this box. You all can do that, right? Just pretend you're in a plexiglass box or inside this thing, you know. No rabbit. My God, what is that? And in that state, in this box, or this cube of equality, I think you've mentioned that, or crystal or something, you would, in meditative state, as Buddha did, Buddha demanded to become enlightened. He said, I'm sitting under this tree until I get it. Jesus was born enlightened. He already had it. Do you want to be a Buddha? If you said yes or no, you've answered your own question. If you said no, well, you can't. It's not that you can't, you won't. Got it? Do you want to be a Christed being? Same thing. Yes or no. So you go into a fourth dimensional meditative state, and what are you going to learn here? Universal truth in the omniverse. Whether you believe that God is love or not, if it is the universal truth, it'll be the universal truth throughout the entire omniverse. Pervasive. Neutrinos everywhere. Unconditional love. God is love. God is truth. About total compassion. Akasha is total compassion. You know, you would learn that in this fourth dimensional meditative state. Okay? So, you got nothing to lose. What are you doing this afternoon? Go home and crawl in a box. I was shut in an ice box when I was 3 years old until I turned blue. I think it was my first initiation or something like that. My mother intuitively knew where I was because they heard me calling, Mommy, Mommy, and they thought I was out in the neighborhood somewhere. So all of a sudden she knew, and she comes flying home, tears open the ice box. When I was a kid, we had an ice box. Okay, the iceman would come and he would put ice in this thing, and that would keep the food cold. Then we got refrigerators, which you all know about refrigerators. Well, when I was a kid, nobody knew to not take the door off the ice box, and I was curious. I crawled in, the door shut. So I'm in, Mommy. You know, she pulls me out. I'm what, 3, 4 years old? I've had death or near-death experiences every 11 years. When I turned 66, I wrote my first book, or Jim and I worked on it. You know, 22, I experienced the white light. I was doing an oil painting. All of a sudden, everything disappeared. There was just me and light. I knew everything that ever was and ever will be. There was no past, present, or future. There was no separation from anything. There was only God. You can't describe the word love. There are no words. And then you're back, but you're different. Right? I went to my first Buddhist meeting. They were all doing lot chants and steps and things and trying to gain their enlightenment. And then we sat down and we talked about it. I said, oh, yeah, I saw that. No, you didn't suffer enough. I'm sorry. So at 33, I woke up that morning and I knew something was going to change. I called my mother and I said, ah. She said, well, I don't think you're crazy, but let's keep in touch, you know. So at 11, I nearly drowned. I was carrying my girlfriend Marion's sister on my shoulder because she couldn't swim and I can swim like an eel. So I was going to walk out to the raft and have her on my shoulders. Well, we found a hole which nobody knew was in the lake, and we went, boop, you know. Well, she's trying not to drown, so she's pushing me down and scratching me and screaming, and the guy on the beach thought we were playing, so he jumps in the water to save us. Then she was drowning him. I had to go back in and pull her off of him, so we were all on the beach like, you know. Well, that night, every time I closed my eyes, I would see what I started to see. And when I started to see, when I got really, really tired of trying to get up, you know, was I looked out, and I think this is real, I don't know, you know, it's hard to know. I saw this light coming toward me in this peace that was just phenomenal. And I just let go. I said, ah. That's when the guy jumped in the water and pulled us out. True story. We're going to do a little sidebar here just for a minute. After I met Tom Sawyer many, many years ago, we were together about 40 years. One day, he just flipped off this comment to me, and I thought he was joking. You never know. You know, avatars can be really funny. They can be really serious. He was very funny. So he said to me, you know, Dan, because I'm a Baptist, we qualify that. And we do total immersion. And if it's at night, it's called nocturnal immersion. I did not say that. Anyway, Tom said, do you know that when John the Baptist, who was his cousin, previously in the form of Elisha in his last incarnation, when John the Baptist, who was the head of the Essene order at the time, when John the Baptist baptized people, he held them under the water a long time. You've all been baptized or sprayed or sprinkled or whatever, right? Well, I was held under water, but not that long. It's like, boop, boop. John held them under. Now, I was told that maybe 30 years ago by Tom, just kind of a flip comment. I was recently in Sarasota, Florida, with a friend of mine who's had 4 near-death experiences, and the last one was phenomenal, and I love to hear her tell that story. She said, oh, God, you want to hear that? Please tell me that. I love that story. She said, okay, I had 5 diseases. And they were all fighting each other, and they were all killing me and all killing each other. There was nothing anybody could do to save me from death. And I had a dream, and I was falling down a well or a hole, and there was a vine hanging down. I grabbed the vine, and I'm pulling myself up and up and up. I got to the top of the well or whatever that was, and there was a white light. She woke up. She was totally cured. I love that story. She said, well, Dan, I've had 4. I said, what? She said, yeah, when I was little, I had blood poisoning, and they pulled me back from that one. And then when I was married to my first husband, we used to go boating all the time, and we were on a river. And I didn't have a life vest on. The boat flipped over, and it held me under the water, and I was trying to get up, and I couldn't. I started to breathe water, like we do when we're in our mom, you know. And then somebody rescued her, but before they rescued her, she got the peace. Right? Well, sometime later, I don't know how much time went by, she's with the husband again down the same river in another boat. Now she's got a life vest on. And there were trees growing alongside the river edge, and of course some of their roots go, you know, into the river. Well, the boat flips over, the branches of the tree lock into her life vest and keep her underwater. Now she's breathing water again. She gets a visitor. Jesus shows up. He said to her, Marta, when John the Baptist used to baptize people, he held them under the water a long time to induce the peace, to begin enlightenment. I nearly fell off my chair. I said, Marta, did you? She said, yeah. I said, Marta, the only other person who ever said that to me was Tom 30 years ago. And he probably knew then that one day I would be in a restaurant in Florida being told the story to make me realize how true it was. It's truth. not relative truth. Do you want to become a Buddha? A Christed being? It's really easy. You have to love yourself as God does, unconditionally. All the things you believe about your nature right now are things you were taught from the time you were in your mother till you got out, and here you're sitting here in a collection of thought forms. It's called an ego. Buddha said you have to get rid of your ego. Well, I don't quite agree with him. I think it's kind of helpful too if you're going to hang out here, you know. But the first 7 years of personality development form you and all that good stuff. But in order for you to be free, you have to comprehend or understand who and what you are, and then choose freedom within all that. I mean, God loves you unconditionally forever. You're made of God, let's face it. So God's not going to ever abandon you. You have free will, so you have the right to choose to love yourself or not as God does. And of course, if you don't, then you can't become a Buddha. You can't become a Christed being because you won't allow yourself to be whole. Each and every one of you is part male, part female, yin yang. Okay? You have to penetrate yourself, spiritually speaking. Make love to your whole nature. Become one so that you can achieve enlightenment. You know? There's some interesting ideas. Buddha means one who is awakened, awakened intelligence. Well, one person's intelligence is another person's garbage dump. And vice versa. So, all right, Buddha. A Buddhi or a Buddha is intellect. Well, certainly my sense is if you're going to be fully enlightened, it requires that, but also a lot more. But anyway, that's that. So there's 5 different things that a Buddha represents. There are 5 different categories. All right? To be a Buddha is to awake to your intellect. Now, how can you know yourself as God knows you? See, God knows you totally, and it doesn't matter what you do or don't do, God's going to love you anyway. But what could you do to learn to love yourself more by gathering intelligence about your nature? Well, find a good astrologer. What, you're having a psychic fair here, right? Oh my God, you got to come. You got to come. Go and do everybody. No. Yeah, get your palms read, get your astrological information. Who are you? You say, well, I'm so-and-so. Well, what sign? What does that mean? You know, astrologically, who are you? And where's your rising sign and all that? Well, in the old days, if you came to me, I would say, who are you? You said, well, I'm so-and-so. Well, what's your house? You know, what's your rising sign? And let me look at your palms. Let me read you. And your feet. You know, they used to read feet in Asia. And that's how they could tell if you were, you know, at a certain point of development. So who are you? Collect all this information. What's your numerological value? You all have a name. It boils down to a number. What does that mean? It means that's the vibration that you came in to learn from. Each one of you has an aura. Mine is green. It's not easy being green. When I teach, it changes. I'm sure some of you have seen that. But basically, each one of you came in on what? One of the 7 rays. And that's your purpose. That's your function. You can come again and do whatever you want, but at this particular lifetime, you've got, I'm green right now. I don't know what color I'm going to choose next. But when you get to know what these represent, then you can tell a lot about a person if you can see auras. Okay, well, what's your color? What's your proclivity? What do you do? Are you a healer? Are you a teacher? You know, what is it that you practice that fills your heart and fills the hearts of others that you work with, you know? And be that. So finding out who you are is collecting your intellect, your nature, what is available to you. And then you still have to choose to love yourself or not. Okay, well, I know all this now, but I still am not sure that I can love all that. Well, change your mind. That's all it requires, you know. So to have an awakening is to have an awakened intelligence or to gather your information about your true nature and then know who you are and present that to yourself. And then choose to love yourself, including all of that. You know, there are no shortcomings. You can't fail in this school. Tell you, this is not a secret, but it'll hopefully change your mind. One of the things that Tom taught us about death, first of all, there is no death. Energy is forever. You're in a school. You came here of your own free will. You came here after you looked at your astrological signs, after your numerological signs, said, I want that and that and this and this. I need to have that situation. I need to be that physical condition. I need a set of parents. And boom, you got born. Okay? So Now I forgot where I was going. Do you remember where I was going with that? You get old, you forget everything you ever knew. Loving yourself, thank you. So, you've got all that stuff together, and you still have to choose to have that loving self. Number 2, to recognize. All right, so you see all of that, and you recognize that. Well, you've got the intellect. Now you've got to go into your heart, your spirit, your emotional body, right? And investigate all of that, to find out how you got who you are in this lifetime alone. There is no time, there is no space, there's only God. So when we think about our past lives, those were all the free will choices you ever made from the beginning when God imagined you up to the present life you're having right now. You are the end result of every past life you've ever had. You're sitting right here. And you have the power to love yourself as God does. That's called enlightenment. Okay? Or if you don't, then you have another incarnation. Incarnate means in the flesh. You come into this planet again, the schoolroom, and now you're having a life based on what you believed about yourself in your last life. So, hell, I don't want to go through that. Well, then change. Ebenezer Scrooge, Christmas past, present, future. He changed, and he changed his life and the life of the little kid with the bad leg and all that. You're the same, so change. Love yourself as God does. Recognize that. To know is to understand. All right, it's not about, you just know. It's beyond belief. You can believe in a lot of things, but do you know? You want to be a Buddha? You've got to know. To be a Christ being, you have to know. You just know. You wake up in the morning and you know what your day is about. You probably have a sense for knowing what may even happen. It also may not. There's probability here, But this is a school. So, I'm back. Thank you. I don't know what you did, but you hot-wired my brain. Thank you for that. Or maybe this is what did it. Okay. There is no death. So when you're finished with school here, I don't care if you're 2 seconds old or if you're 105, you do not get out of school until you graduate. So the next time one person next to you that you dearly love or whatever dies, there is no death, they vacate this physical vessel, they have graduated. Nobody leaves here until they have graduated. My former business partner, I just found out yesterday, had transitioned 2 or 3 days ago, and I said to my church clerk, I said, "Oh, Mario graduated." He learned what he came to learn. He's done. He's out of here. You finish grade school, you graduate, you go to junior high, you graduate, and in here, you have a life, you have an experience, you have all these opportunities that you preset for yourself to have, your contract, and when you're done, you graduate. There is no death. Yeah, you're going to be sad because you lose a friend and you can't pick them up and talk to them on the phone or whatever you're into. But basically, to know that they're not dead, what do they do shortly after they've passed over? Come back to you in a dream. Show up in the middle of the kitchen smoking a cigar. That was your grandmother. There is no death, so you just come to know. The fourth element of being a Buddha is to be enlightened. And to be enlightened to the point that you know what you know, and then you can teach what you know by your example. I took the vow of the Bodhisattva with Tom Sawyer when we were with the Dalai Lama many years ago. There are 2 levels of the vow of the Bodhisattva, as you probably know. One is the vow of silence, which means I would live in a cave somewhere and just broadcast energy out, so people can wake up or whatever. The other one is I will teach, I will open my mouth, I will make sounds and gestures so that perhaps one of you or all of you can get it. So the vow of the Bodhisattva is I will incarnate until the last being wakes up. Could be a while. So if you want to be a Buddha and you want all of that, also take the vow of the Bodhisattva. What you going to do in the universe or omniverse? Just come back to school. It's kind of fun to graduate and then come back to be a teacher in the school that you were taught. I died in 1942. I died in a concentration camp. I was a homosexual art teacher in Denmark. The Nazis invaded Denmark at dawn, 5 o'clock or something. By noon, the war was over. Then they went out and they found all the intellectuals, and they thought we were going to be part of the underground and mess up the plan, so they arrested us all and sent us off to camp. Well, when I was in high school, I was not a good sports person. I have a depth perception problem, so I can't catch balls and all that stuff, but I tried. And I was on the football team. They used to use me for the tackling dummy. So Mr. Earth, our drama teacher, came one day and he said, hey, can I have Dan to be in this play we're doing? And my coach said, Dan, let's face it, you don't have a future in sports. Why don't you go with Mr. Eartha? Guess what the play was? Diary of Anne Frank. I played the part of Otto. In the last scene of the play, they break the door down and take us to camp. Wow. I ended up going back to Denmark, to Copenhagen. I found the street where I used to sit on the corner and drink coffee with my students, which I love to this day. If I can't have coffee out at Joe's and sit outside, I'm a pig in mud, you know? So I found the street. It used to be cobblestone. I picked up the asphalt, and there was a cobblestone. There were trees that used to that line the avenue. The trolley went in front, you know, and they captured me in a building. The boots came running after me, and they caught me in a building, and they dragged me off to camp. Well, after I thought because you don't know that you know. So fortunately, I had Tom Sawyer in my life at the time. He says, oh, big deal. So you found out that you were a gay art teacher in Denmark, and the Nazis captured you and took you off to camp, and that's where you died. Died in 1842. I came back in 1944. He said, Dan, the only reason you came back this time was because there's not one country on this planet that honors gay people. That's changed. It's not for me, but it's because of us. When you choose compassion over hatred, or when you choose compassion over indifference or whatever, it makes a difference. If the Supreme Court isn't wise enough to know that it's time, it'll happen. It's already happening. And it's not just about LGBT people. It's about women around the planet who are subservient, who are still considered chattel. It's about children who were kept in slavery. It's about all of that. This new age is about equality. And the fire will not stop until the whole thing is ablaze with consciousness. Choose to be a Buddha. Choose to be an enlightened person. It's a decision you make. And then the path that you walk will get you there. It might get you to nothing or to be a zero. And then you'll have everything. It's all potential. 4 days ago, I was doing a talk at Barnes & Noble in Rochester, New York. A woman sitting over there said, Dan, when I had my near-death experience, I was a bit concerned because all I experienced was flatness. But it felt incredible. I said, good, because I have a buddy who is a Southern Baptist, darling, down in the Carolinas, who had a near-death experience, and when he experienced the nothing, he thought he'd gone to hell. There is no God, there's nothing. You didn't wait long enough. I have tried, by asking his permission, to bring him insight. He still chooses to be a Southern Baptist, locked into his little box, you see, which is fine. You know, it will lead him to another incarnation where perhaps he will dare to be free. Saw the movie Lincoln not long ago with a friend of mine. And after we had a wonderful discussion about the attributes of what that film presented, you know. And I said, you know, it's the slaves that were freed, we still have slaves. We have to choose to be free. Don't wait for somebody to free you. Free yourself. You do it by simply saying, I love me as God does. And then you're home. Penetrate your male and female natures. Make love to yourself. Find that wholeness, that oneness that you are already. You're already masters. But if you don't know it, you don't know it, and you can't have it. But it's not that it's not there. You're all Christed beings. You're all Buddhas. But if you limit yourself in your beliefs or in your ideas of your nature with your intellect, it's fine. You'll learn from that, but then you'll take it into another incarnation and perhaps go further. Why wait? I need you. I need you to be bodhisattvas, all of you. You know, we have a few billion people on this planet who are basically not even able to get food and water every day. And we can be our own spiritual Peace Corps, so to speak, you know. In the 28 years I've been doing these ordinations, I've ordained between 15,000 and 17,000 people all around the world. We don't discriminate by age, by lifestyle, by gender, by anything. Everyone is welcomed. Everyone is embraced. You don't have to stop being a Presbyterian or a Buddhist or whatever. It's added to what you've already chosen to make yourself to be. But it's about service, teaching and or healing. You know? So become enlightened, become full of light, become full of awareness and intellect and whatever, and then make that self available. The last part of being a Bud or a Buddhi is to fathom, to have comprehension, to understand. But in the earth plane, even God itself cannot help you without your consent. So to ask God for help, you have to make a step forward. When Tom died, he was under a pickup truck full of firewood, crushed to death. A baby couldn't have survived it, but he did. And God said, well, you're not dead yet. You haven't given your free will. But if you agree to this contract to prevent nuclear war, to promote the priesthood, and to prove that death doesn't exist, then either say yes or step forward. So once again, it required that you do something. You do an action toward a reaction. You go toward the universe comes back to you. The universe can't come to you because of free will. It's a sacred trust. Your free will and God are equal in power. That's how awesome it is. Church doesn't teach you that stuff. So anyway, no, we're not going to serve breakfast here. Somebody asked Tom if he could teach about his life review. He said, yeah, I'd have to talk for 10 years nonstop to give adequate justice to it. So you've been spared. I am so happy to be here. I mean, I've been coming here for years, and it's always a delight for me to see old faces, new faces, and to have an opportunity to just, you know, spill my brains here and there. So I hope in some way you will take some of this and take it to heart and motivate yourself, and then meet me on the path. What is it, if you see the Buddha coming, you kill him? Be kind. Thank you so much.